7:42 a.m., August 17, 1942. The humid air at Eagle Farm Airfield near Brisbane is thick with the smell of salt and ozone. Under the silver wing of a Douglas A-20 Havoc, Captain Paul Papy Gunn crouches in the dirt. His face is lined with more than just age. At 43, he carries 21 years of Navy service and a heavy, silent secret. His wife and 4 children are trapped in the Japanese-held Santo Tomas prison camp in Manila. Every second he spends on the ground feels like a betrayal. Around him, mechanics are doing the unthinkable. They are welding heavy .50 caliber machine guns into the nose of a bomber. This space was meant for a bombardier and a glass window. Now, it is being filled with steel and lead. The welding torches hiss. Sparks shower the tarmac like falling stars. Gunn watches the metal glow red. He knows the math of the Pacific is currently written in American blood. He is about to change that math forever. The 5th Air Force was dying. By mid-1942, the Japanese were reinforcing New Guinea at will. They moved troops under a canopy of clouds and heavy anti-aircraft fire. American doctrine dictated high-altitude bombing. It was precise on paper, but useless in the windswept reality of the Bismarck Sea. B-17S dropped tons of iron from 20,000 feet. They hit nothing but water. When the bombers tried to drop low, Japanese deck gunners shredded their thin aluminum skins. Captain Ed Larner had watched 3 of his crews burn and vanish into the waves just the week before. The Allied mission was failing. The Japanese commanders believed they were invincible behind their wall of flak and maneuvering destroyers. They viewed American bombers as slow, clumsy prey. General George Kenney, the new commander of the 5th, needed a miracle. He needed a way to hit moving ships at point-blank range without losing every pilot in the process. Paul Gunn offered that miracle. He proposed skip bombing. He wanted to fly so low that his bombs would skip across the waves like flat stones. But to get close enough to skip a bomb, a pilot had to survive a gauntlet of fire. The solution was simple and terrifying. Turn the bomber into a giant shotgun. The Japanese sailors on the transport Kyokusei Maru expected a predictable fight. They looked to the sky for the heavy B-17S. They prepared their long-range guns for a vertical attack. They expected to see the slow, deliberate approach of a bomber wing. Instead, they saw a nightmare rising from the horizon. They saw a wall of water and steel. The Americans were no longer high in the clouds. They were skimming the whitecaps. The Japanese gunners on the decks found themselves looking down, not up. They expected the Americans to be afraid of the defensive fire. Instead, the Americans were the fire. The silence of the morning was shattered by the roar of 14 forward-firing guns. The deck of the transport became a slaughterhouse before the first bomb was even released. The Japanese soldiers, hardened by years of victory, felt a sudden, cold realization. The rules of engagement had been torn apart. They were not fighting a bomber. They were fighting a commerce destroyer. The hunters had become the helpless. The ships they thought were fortresses were now just large, slow targets for a man who had nothing left to lose but his family. The factual record of the Battle of the Bismarck Sea is a testament to this technical brutality. Between March 2nd and March 4th, 1943, the modified B-25s proved their lethality. Military logs show that 12 strafers led the charge. They carried a combined 168 machine guns in their noses and cheek packs. In the first 30 seconds of the attack on the Kyokusei Maru, 3 B-25s dropped 6 bombs. 2 hit the hull below the waterline. The ship sank in 40 minutes. Statistics from the engagement are staggering. Of the nearly 7,000 Japanese troops bound for Leh, fewer than 1,200 reached their destination. 8 transports were sent to the bottom of the sea. 4 destroyers followed them. Allied losses were minimal. Only 4 aircraft were lost in the entire operation. General MacArthur later called it one of the most complete and annihilating combats of all time. The impossible gunship had cleared the sea of an entire convoy in less than 72 hours. The data was clear. The era of high-altitude naval bombing was over. The era of the strafer had begun. This event transformed the ideology of aerial warfare. Before Paul Gunn, the bomber was a delicate instrument of precision. It was a scalpel used from a distance. After the Bismarck Sea, the bomber became a hammer. The American perception of what an aircraft could do shifted toward multi-role dominance. It was no longer enough to carry a payload. An airplane had to be an aggressor. This transformation was not just tactical, it was psychological. It gave the Allied pilots a sense of overwhelming superiority. They knew they carried more firepower than anything the enemy could put in the air. For the Japanese, the perception was one of black death. They realized that the vast distances of the Pacific could no longer protect them. The American ability to adapt and modify in the field was a weapon they had not anticipated. The factory engineers in Ohio had said the B-25 would buckle under the recoil. They said the center of gravity would make it unflyable. But the pilots in New Guinea proved that reality is defined by the man in the cockpit, not the man at a desk. The transformation was complete. The bomber was now a predator. The recurring symbol of this victory was the .50 caliber shell casing. It was a simple brass cylinder. In the Pacific, it represented American abundance. While the Japanese struggled with dwindling resources, American B-25s were raining brass by the thousands. Each strafer could fire over 200 pounds of lead per second. After a mission, the floors of the B-25s were ankle-deep in spent casings. They were everywhere. They rolled in the dirt of the airfields. They were hammered into souvenirs by bored mechanics. This brass was a physical manifestation of democracy's industrial might. It was the product of thousands of workers in factories back home. It was the result of a supply chain that stretched across the globe. Each casing represented a bullet that had suppressed a gun or shattered a bridge. To the Japanese, these shells were a sign of an inexhaustible enemy. To Paul Gunn, they were the keys to a prison cell in Manila. The brass was cold, hard, and plentiful. It was the currency of liberation. It was the weight that tipped the scales of the war. History remembers the generals and the grand strategies. It often forgets the mechanics and the men who welded their way to victory. Paul Papy Gunn died in a plane crash in 1957. He lived to see his family free. He lived to see the Philippines liberated. His legacy is not just a list of sunken ships. It is a larger truth about the nature of freedom. Freedom is often defended by the impossible ideas of common men. It is protected by those who refuse to accept the limits of their equipment or their circumstances. The B-25 strafer was a machine built from desperation and genius. It was a tool of abundance used to break the back of tyranny. Today, the strafers are gone, replaced by jets and missiles. But the spirit remains. It is the spirit of the field modification. It is the belief that a single person with a welding torch and a reason to fight can change the world. The Bismarck Sea remains a quiet stretch of water. The ships are rusted hulks on the ocean floor, but the echo of 14 guns still rings through history. It is a reminder that when democracy is threatened, it does not just defend, it adapts. It overcomes. It hits back with everything it has. Dear audience, please share your thoughts in comments. Like and share this video. Also tell me which next topic you suggest.